Hello, everybody. It's Hedgehog. I'm here again. Welcome back to this fucking nonsense. Yeah. So, this video is obviously about Elden Ring. I'm not gonna beat around the bush or anything like that. I love this game, almost more than anything in the world. You might be noticing I'm saying a lot and stumbling a lot, and that's because this video doesn't have a script. I wanted to get this video out as quickly as I possibly could. For those of you who are new here, who just happened to click on this video, this is not like most of the videos I do. Most of them are very edited and scripted and put together. This is not gonna be that. This is just gonna be me talking over a bunch of random footage, probably, because those types of videos, while very fun and very polished, take for fucking ever to get out. And I wanted to get this one out, hopefully within a week of the game's release. That means that I am in no means anywhere near close to this game. I'm working my way through Stormvale Castle right now. I've explored most of Limgrave, and that's about it. So this video is by no means comprehensive. Anything I say is liable to be different in the late game. This is mostly just my impressions of what I've experienced so far. It's FromSoft, so their games start off slow as shit, so if this is how good the starting area is, it's only gonna get better from here. And harder. Much harder. I'm gonna cry. But yeah, so this video is literally just me talking about my impressions of the game. I have a couple points. I have some notes in front of me, so we're going to be going off of those. A couple FYIs before I actually get into my thoughts. As far as the terminology goes, I've been playing Souls games for years, so the words souls for runes, bonfire for sites of grace are kind of nailed to my brain. So if any of you are out there who have played Elden Ring but not any of the other Souls games, I apologize for the terminology I'm going to be using that you're not going to understand. Like I said, I've been through most of Limgrave, and I'm working my way through Stormvale. So there will be spoilers for Limgrave, but it will only be early game stuff. That's all I'm going to be talking about. For the most part, I'm going to be talking in pretty generic terms as well. There's only one or two things I might spoil, a couple minor quests. Also, I'm using stream footage. Because I live streamed last Saturday on my main channel. If you want to watch me live stream, it's there. You should go check it out. I would love to see more of you there. Say hi. Make fun of me. I'm really bad at Souls games. I die a lot. Also, I made things harder for myself because my chat insisted that I go retch. So, if you're wondering why I'm wearing weird chainmail armor that looks really ugly, and none of the starting sets, yeah, that would be why. That would be why. I'm gonna probably not be able to show the early game footage, which is me running around in my undies, because yes, YouTube will end my existence. But yeah, so without further ado, I'm really bad at transitioning. Let's get right into it, lads. And I think the most important thing to start with is the gameplay, because that's kind of what's front and center. This is probably going to be the longest section because I have quite a bit to say about the gameplay. I mean, it's big Dark Souls. Frankly, it's big Dark Souls. That's the meme, I know, but it's true. It's big Dark Souls. I really actually almost prefer the Souls-like game being open world just because it gives you a little bit of a breather. I've been playing Souls games for years, but usually I can only play them for like an hour because I get burnt out and I can't concentrate anymore, and I just start being really bad at the game. But with Elden Ring, if I'm having trouble with an area or whatever, I can go to a different area. There's always new things I can explore. There's always new places I can go. I'm not really bound to a certain path, because even in some of the more non-linear, like the regular, like the first Dark Souls, there's a set path you're supposed to go down, because if you don't go down, you're gonna get your ass wiped unless you're really good at the game. I'm not really good at the game. So I actually almost prefer it. I've been able to play Elden Ring for like almost entire days at a time, which is fantastic. I'm having so much fun with it. But like I said, going open world is probably one of the best decisions that FromSoft could have made with this game. And I think the thing that was kind of able to allow them to realize that Dark Souls could be an open world game was Breath of the Wild. Because obviously Elden Ring is a very Breath of the Wild style open world, with the emphasis not on, checklists and quests and objectives, but on exploring and discovering and finding things. Because Breath of the Wild was the first of this kind of subgenre of open world games, it was a little rough around the edges. I mean, it's fucking brilliant. I have probably 150 hours in Breath of the Wild. Like, I love Breath of the Wild. But I did, and I still do have some problems with it. Fun fact, I actually wrote a script for a video on Breath of the Wild. It was going to kind of nominally go in the fixing series that my Fixing Sword Art Online video is in. But then I realized that I had to get all the footage off of a capture card, and then that was going to suck. So I never made it. But there are a couple of points that I made in that script that I just was grinning like an idiot playing Elden Ring, because Elden Ring fixed a lot of the problems I had with Breath of the Wild. So if you'll allow me this tangent, because it'll help illustrate why I think Elden Ring is so good by comparing it to Breath of the Wild. Again, I really love Breath of the Wild. It's a really good game. I just had some issues with it that I think could have made it even better. A large portion of that script I spent talking about the discovery element of Breath of the Wild, the exploration. Well, the exploration itself is very, very good, and there's a lot of cool, interesting encounters to have and things to find. But the problem I have with it is that the rewards at the ends of these kind of exploration sections are all the same. Inevitably, you find a shrine and you get a spirit orb. Sometimes you get a Korok seed, I guess, but it's either a Korok seed or a spirit orb, and that's it. That's always your reward. And that's fine, but it really makes me go, oh, every time I find something or finish an area, I go, oh, there's the spirit orb. And every once in a while you'll get a piece of armor or something, which is pretty cool. And I've had those moments in Breath of the Wild where I've gone, oh shit, that's so cool. But they're very few and far between, because most of the time you find a shrine, you get a spirit orb. Elden Ring, on the other hand, has so many fucking cool ass things to find. And its experiences are just in general much more high quality, I think, than Breath of the Wild's were. And it sounds like a lot of the problems that I had with Breath of the Wild are probably going to be fixed in the sequel. But to illustrate this point, I wanted to compare a quest from Breath of the Wild and a quest from Elden Ring. Quest. Elden Ring doesn't really have quests, but it's kind of essentially the closest you get to a quest chain in a Souls game. So in Breath of the Wild, you can meet with this bird guy named Cass, who has his little accordion, and he'll give you these little riddles that'll lead you to, shrines and stuff like that. And they're a specific type of exploration world quest. So there's one particular quest that you find in Farron Woods, I believe it is. And I cannot remember the name of the quest or anything like that, or the riddle. But basically what the riddle boils down to is you have to go look at a place on the map and find an area where a river resembles a dragon's mouth. And these cast quests are awesome. These riddle quests are fucking fantastic. They're always so unique and so cool, and you have to do so many interesting things with the mechanics. The problem is when you get there. But when you get there, obviously, you have this big climactic battle. There's, a bunch of dudes on poles shooting lightning arrows at you, and you gotta, work your way around the arena and take them all out, and blah, blah, blah. And it's really cool. And then you get into the end game zone, the big reward, and it's a fountain, which is okay. That's pretty unique. There's only 3 of those in the game. Lucky for me, when I did this quest, I already had one, but you had to have a scale of Farosh to proceed. So I did, and the door opened, and it was a shrine, and you go in the shrine, and you get a spirit orb. Yay! What a great reward that I did not see coming at all for this quest. In contrast, Elden Ring has basically a quest that is very, not only spectacular in leading you to find it, because like I said, Elden Ring doesn't have objective markers or anything like that. You can talk to NPCs, and NPCs will lead you to various places. But you have to find those places yourself, and you don't get any markers and all that stuff. You can make markers for yourself on the map, but you don't get any, which I think is fantastic. It really makes you want to look around the world and find everything yourself. But anyway, I was heading down a Mistvault Forest to get the map of Limgrave East, because I like seeing where I'm going and seeing what I'm experiencing. And I was heading down there, and I heard this voice that was calling for help. So he's in a really weird out of the way place. Like, you're going along the road and you have to like go on the top of this arch that's on top of the road, which makes sense. Obviously, he's trying to find help, so he probably tried to go to a pretty high place so he could see people coming. But you go up there, and this guy says, yeah, hi, I am the next rightful ruler of Limgrave after fucking Godric, the goddamn piece of shit, dies. So I have a fort that got taken that I was requested to defend, and now it's getting taken. So I need somebody to go clear it out for me. So you're like, okay, cool. So I go down there, I get distracted by like 50 things on the way, because like I stopped at the minor Erd tree, and wow. And I eventually get to the fort. And, it takes me probably about 10 tries to get through this goddamn thing, because I'm really bad. Because first you have to go up, this big expanse with a bunch of, like, barricades and stuff. And they're shooting ballistas at you, which is great. And then you have to, like, defeat, like, 6 dudes in armor. And then there's a big pumpkin head elite enemy that's there, too. Sometimes you can use the ballista to damage him, which is very fun and creative. And then you have to go past him, and then when you get inside, you get surrounded by rats.
Rats, we are the rats. Celebrate another with a birthday bash. Michael, it's your birthday today. Cake and ice cream is on its way.
And there's a bunch of guys throwing, fire bombs at you with explosive barrels everywhere. So you have to like duck and weave through this goddamn awful shit. And you finally get to the top. And you get to this climactic goddamn battle with this elite knight. And you very, very quickly realize that this guy has a really interesting special move. He can basically like cover his sword in blood and shoot it at you, which is very edgy and very Dark Souls. And you're like, okay. So, but the interesting thing is that this guy's going to take you a couple of times probably to figure out how to beat, because you have to work around this special move that he does. Because if you try to just dodge backwards, you'll realize that the move has a lot of range and it will still hit you. So eventually you have to like figure out the timing, because it takes him a little while to coat the blood. He pauses for a second and then he shoots you. And so you have to like figure out the timing of when to dodge to the side and get around him and blah, 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 blah. And so it takes you a couple times and you finally beat him. And your reward for beating him is that you get an Ash of War. And it's called Blood something. And I paused for a second. I was like, wait a second. Did I just get this guy's special move that he was using against me? Is that really what just happened? So I go to a site of grace, I go to a bonfire, and I sit down and I apply the Ash of War to my weapon, and I try it out, and it is the exact fucking move that guy was using against me. And that's so goddamn cool, dude! That's so awesome! Like, it's just a beautiful build-up, because now you already know how to use this Ash of War because you've seen the enemy use it, and you've figured out how you have to work around it in order to kill the guy. So now you get to use it against tougher people, and it's just so fucking cool, dude. It's so cool. I love it. It's such a great, satisfying reward because you worked so hard and now you get to use the thing that this guy was. Oh, okay. I gotta stop gushing about it, but like, compared to, there's an unrelated spirit orb, the fact that you get this guy's ability that he's using against you is so cool. And that leads into kind of like the bigger thing I like about Elden Ring over Breath of the Wild is that there's so many goddamn things for you to find. Like there were plenty of things for you to find in Dark Souls. But like they've taken that number and they've like doubled it. Specifically by adding Ashes of War, specifically by adding memory and basically adding attunement and talisman slots that you can find. Basically, they've tried to take anything that they can have you find, and they've had you find it. Like, they have things for you to upgrade your flasks, they've got weapons, they've got armor, they've got spells, they've got books and scrolls and stuff that if you bring them to tutors will give you more spells. They've got, the talismans, the memory slots, and they've got, the Ashes of War, and they've got upgrade materials, and there's so much stuff you can find, guys. Like, there's so much stuff. You never know what you're gonna find. And sometimes it's random. Sometimes it doesn't really have to do with what's surrounding you. But a lot of the times, you can tell kind of what you're gonna find. So, like, I ended up breaking into this kind of like wizardy tower at one point, and like it's surrounded in books and like, you know, like globes and all sorts of like sorcery implements. And so I get to the top of the tower and I'm like, oh, is this gonna be a spell? What is this gonna be? And it's a memory slot, because that makes sense that a wizard would store a memory slot in a tower. I wish more games did stuff like this. And some of them do, but not a lot do. A lot of the times your rewards for shit are just entirely random or make no sense. So I love that this game has this great sense of continuity to where you are and what you find. It's mwah, chef's kiss. Oh, it's so cool. Anyway, I've been talking its praises up for ages now. There is one more thing I wanted to talk about with the gameplay before we move on, and that's the only disappointing thing about the game, which is a pretty minor thing, honestly. It's the tutorial, and it's only because FromSoft's games usually have these phenomenal tutorials. So, I mean, obviously when you start the game, the intro video is, because past Souls games have had, like, these amazing 3D, like, you know, animated intro videos that, you know, tell the basics of the world, and the moving visuals really add a lot to it. But Elden Ring kind of went back to, like, Demon Souls, and just, it's got pictures. I mean, they're pretty pictures, but they are just pictures. The first area, I mean, and this is probably so they could add, you know, 50 more forts to the game, but so I'm willing to forgive them. The first area is really, really cool, where you go, you know, kind of down the path and across the bridge, and you go to fight the grafted scion. That's really, really cool, and then he kills you, and then you're in a cave. You kill some dudes in armor, you kill a bigger dude in armor. Wow. I mean, compared to, like, you know, like Dark Souls had the asylum, the undead asylum. Bloodborne had Central Yharnam, with, you know, the cleric beast in Gascoigne, and Dark Souls 3 had, you know, the undead, I think it's called the undead graveyard, but I don't remember what it's called. And it's this cool ashy area, and you do still fight some dudes there, but there are these weird cloak guys, and then the area is capped off with the most fucking intense tutorial boss I've ever experienced. Udex Gundyr kicked my ass. I think I had to fight him like 20 times. In contrast, this dude, can't even remember his name, the fucking soldier guy that you fight at the end of this tutorial, I didn't even die to him once. I just killed him. And this is from me, who hadn't played a Souls game in like 6 months. And I was still able to beat him, like, first try. Yeah. If I hadn't, like, seen so much footage of the network test and seen, you know, all the footage of what's beyond the tutorial, and it had just been that was my only impression, I would have been a little concerned at that point. But obviously you open the door, you know, the world's fucking phenomenal. I think they kind of phoned it in the tutorial area, again, just because they're putting in more effort in the main game. This tutorial area feels more like just a cursory, okay, yep, here you go, here's the basics, go and get into the world. It's much shorter than most of the other tutorial areas that they have done. It's much simpler, it's not as complicated, it's just basically a straight line. I think they just did it so that you could just get through it and get to the main game, which is admirable in its own way. It's just kind of disappointing after, you know, all of the crazy ass tutorial levels you've gotten in FromSoft games. So that kind of, I guess, doesn't really transition at all well into me talking about the story and the world, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Here we go. Speaking of initial impressions, of obviously, the world building is kind of more important to Souls games than the actual story itself. And the world is fucking beautiful and intense, and there's so much you can find there. I'm so thrilled to watch Vati videos of the lore, because I'm really bad at figuring out the lore myself. My initial impressions are that its world in general is a bit more conventionally Western than most FromSoft games. Dark Souls had this incredibly unique world. Bloodborne has this incredibly unique world. Haven't played Sekiro, so I don't know about that one, but from what I'm aware of, it's pretty unique too. And obviously a lot of that uniqueness is still there. A lot of that gorgeous visual design, a lot of those fucking wild-ass character designs are there. But some of the elements, like, oh yeah, there's Radahn, he's a big orc. There's the demi-humans, who are basically like the goblin equivalents. This is obviously probably George R.R. Martin's influence, because he is one of the most famous Western fantasy authors of all time. He wrote Game of Thrones. obviously some of his ideas are going to be a little more conventionally Western. And I was very happy when they said that he was building the initial world and then they were taking it and running with it. Because obviously George R. R. Martin and FromSoft is a very good pairing. I'm very glad that they did it. But I was very prepared to get something a little more conventionally Western. I'm glad they didn't go strictly high fantasy. I'm glad they've gone a little more Viking-y, Raider-y, kind of Northern Norsey influence with it, which is basically the number one alternative to your standard high fantasy setting that a lot of games and a lot of stories have been going down recently. So that's even getting a little bit old, but there's still a little more you can wring out of it. Like, okay, cool. Like I can handle that. And obviously the first area of most Souls games is kind of the most boring area. Like you've got the Undead Burg and church in Dark Souls 1. You've got the High Wall of Lothric in Dark Souls 3. I actually find Central Yharnam pretty interesting, but as far as most of Bloodborne is concerned, it is kind of the most typical area. So like, obviously Limgrave is not going to be as interesting as the other areas we're going to go to later. And I've already seen a little bit of the Rotten Lands, and that looks fucking cool as shit because I got transporter trapped there. So obviously, Dark Souls FromSoft likes to do the slow build. They pack all of their cool areas towards the tail end of the game because it builds hype and it builds tension and stuff, obviously. So Limgrave isn't going to be as visually interesting as some of the later areas are, I'm sure. So like I'm more than willing to go, it's probably going to get way more visually appealing as you go on. Just, give it some time. And I'm enjoying the gameplay enough and the minor stories that are being told enough that, like, it's whatever. There's also, I forgot to mention, the Ailing Village on the Weeping Peninsula. I like that. I like that a lot. Those men have tentacles on their faces. That's cool. As far as the actual story goes, obviously, most FromSoft games are very hard to parse their stories. I like the fact that in Elden Ring there's still so much to uncover. There's still so much world building to figure out, but at the very least, the main story kind of makes a bit of sense. So, like, to compare with the initial Dark Souls, in the initial Dark Souls, you wake up in an asylum and you got a guy that tells you, go ring a bell of awakening and you'll know what the fuck's going on. So you get to the main place and the dude goes, actually, there's 2 bells of awakening. So it's going to take you even longer to figure out what's going on. So you do that. And then this big fucking door opens and you got to go through this area with snake men and traps for no reason. And then you got to go through another area that looks like this cool climactic city. And then you got to fight these 2 fucking dudes in armor who they can eat my ass. And then you're told by this fucking servant, yeah, you gotta kill these 4 dudes for their souls. You're like, oh, okay. So you go kill the dudes for their souls, and you still don't know why. And then you fight one more dude, and you can kindle the fire, or you can leave. And you kind of know why at that point. Obviously, I know more about Dark Souls lore because I've watched Fonty videos. But like the story, unless you really go digging for it, even the main story is hard to parse. Whereas in Elden Ring, and from what I'm aware of in Sekiro as well, they've started at least making their main story a little easier to figure out. Like, obviously you come into Elden Ring knowing, okay, so there's this thing called the Elden Ring. It's broken. A bunch of dudes have inherited the power of this ring. They've gotten these bits of grace, and you gotta reclaim them. And your first target is this guy named Godric in Stormvale Castle. Go kill him, get the bit of ring, then you'll go get the other bits of ring, and you'll become the Elden Lord. I still don't really understand quite what a tarnished is. Obviously, we've lost grace, and that's why we're tarnished. But I don't really know what that means, and I probably won't, but that's fine. That's a detail. I can figure that out. The fact that I know where I'm going and why I'm going there is pretty nice. But they've still left a lot of shit out there, probably more shit than any other Souls game, because the world's just fucking bigger. It's not just like a bunch of areas you're going through. It's a whole goddamn world to explore. It's awesome. It's fantastic. I love it. Story's good. I'm so excited to actually learn what it's about. So finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the PC port, because I'm playing on PC. The one thing that seemingly has marred Elden Ring's fantastic 10 out of 10 across the board release is its PC port. I'm going to be a shameless FromSoft fangirl and defend them, mostly because I really haven't had any problems. A week before it released, they released the PC requirements, and a bunch of people were kind of freaking out because they were a little bit high. Again, I don't have this problem. I have a really beefy computer for work because I do YouTube, and rendering videos takes a lot of graphic and processing power. So I stream, and I need a good PC to stream games with it. So I have a really nice PC. My system requirements were essentially the recommended, almost exactly one-on-one. I think my graphics card and my Intel Core were exactly the one that they wanted. So I've had no problems with it. The only thing I've had is in 20 hours, I had one crash to desktop, and that was in a loading screen after I had died, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. And I had, on the first day, probably, before the newest patch, I did have a little tiny bit of lag when I entered new areas, because obviously there's a lot of things to load in, which was fine. I wasn't in any battles usually when I loaded any new areas, and it would only last for about, 5 seconds. So it wasn't really that big of a deal. Besides that, it's run flawlessly. I had to turn down 1 or 2 settings on the thing. So like my shadow quality isn't at max, and the motion blur is obviously off because I get sick watching motion blur, and the ambient occlusion's down a little bit. But other than that, all my settings are at max. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm having no problems. I think part of the problem, and this is not all the problem, sometimes people are just having beefy PCs and the game still isn't running on them for whatever reason. I think a lot of the problems have been with AMD Ryzen cores. Intel cores just run games better in general. I know a lot of people have trouble running games on AMD cores sometimes. So that could be part of it. I think a lot of the reason, though, is that over the last couple of years, a lot of people have moved over from console gaming to PC gaming because PC gaming is becoming a viable market again, finally. And it's just easier because then you can have a machine to work off of, and you can have a machine to play games off of, and you don't need to buy, 2 to 3 different consoles to get things. So I just play games on my PC. And I have for years and years and years, so I know how it works. A lot of people, I think, have moved over to PC and don't realize that the first, on a good port, the first 15 minutes of a game are going to be fiddling with the settings to get it to work. On a bad port, it's going to be the first hour. That's just how gaming on PC works. For that extra graphical fidelity, for that extra, ease of having one machine that does everything, for, that extra, 4K resolution, for that extra frames, for all that good stuff, there's the trade-off of it just takes longer to get it to function and to get it to work. And I'm not excusing FromSoft. I know some people have just had problems regardless of those things. And I know I'm going to get a comment about it, even though I just said it. Shut up. Also, I do want to say that FromSoft is much more experienced with console programming than they are with PC programming. They have made PC ports for a couple of their games, but not all of them. A lot of them have been console exclusive, and that's how they have been for years. They are primarily a console developer. And PC is a super fucking hard platform to port to because unlike consoles where, most of the systems have the same specs, or maybe there's like 2 different versions of the same specs, every single PC is different. That's why we get, recommended specs for running games, because every single system has something slightly different. Every system comes with some different processor, a different graphics card, a different blah, blah, blah. So it's hard to figure out how to make a game that will work on as many machines as you can. And Elden Ring's a big fucking game. It's a game for gamers who have gaming PCs, frankly. Finally, the last thing that people have been complaining about is the controls. And I hate to break it to you guys, Souls games are just meant to be played with a controller. That's how they are designed, regardless of how you keybind the keyboard keys, regardless of what you do with it, you're going to get an inferior experience playing with a keyboard because Souls games are just designed to be played with a controller in mind. Those people who have been having problems with controllers, getting them to work, that is an actual problem that does need to be addressed. I will 100% agree with that, for sure. But if you're trying to play on a keyboard, just get a USB controller. You can get one for $10 on Amazon. If you could afford the $60 price tag to buy Elden Ring, you can afford to buy a $10 controller. I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit of a FromSoft apologist. I know there are some issues, and it should have had less lag and stuff when it first launched, but I think compared to most of their other ports, they did a pretty good job with it. I'm not gonna lie. But sorry to end it on a weird downer. This game's awesome, and I love it, and you should go play it. Just go play it. If you have any interest at all in Souls-like games, just go play it. Please. Please. Thanks, guys, for listening to me ramble for a half an hour. Wow, that went longer than I anticipated. I guess have a good day. Have a good day. Have a good life. Give me a subscribe, like, comment, what should I have you comment? Comment, Ornstein and Smoke and eat my ass. Comment that. Leave a comment. It helps the YouTube algorithm like me more. The more comments you leave, especially arguments. YouTube algorithm loves arguments. Please argue with each other in the comments. I dare you. I dare you. Start an argument. A good-natured one. Don't be mean. All right. Love you guys. Bye.